make sure, because I'll keep talking, they know me. So anyway, I introducing to you Miss Sundra Grant and our artiste, I'm calling her Renee. Miss Renee. Come on out, y'all.
Wow.
Okay, Miss Sandra Renee Smith, we are so glad to have you on stage today, and I have the pleasure of doing your interview. So let's get into it.
Yes.
So first, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you did some nursing, and how you became a self-taught Gullah artist.
But first, let's do the rah-rah. Let's make sure y'all can yuddy me. Can everybody yuddy me okay? All right. Well, my background career is in nursing, but before I got there, let me tell you where I came from. I am a native-born St. Helena, authentically Gullah artist. I was born in the house where I was raised, and I was delivered by one of the last midwives on the island. Her name was Miss Missy. Now, I was one of 11 children, and so my mother went into labor about 6 o'clock that afternoon, and she sent my daddy to fetch Miss Missy fast, because I was coming fast. Well, it was 6 o'clock, and by then Miss Missy was well on her way to relaxation. Because see, we have something called the muscadine wine. Oh yeah. And every year we brew up a batch of muscadine wine, and so we can sip on that through, the year. Well, Miss Missy had already started on her wine. And so I am grateful to be here. Yes, but I grew up on St. Helena. I don't know how much you all know about St. Helena, but we grew up basically in isolation over there before the bridges came. And so we were self-sustaining people. Took care of our own farming and fishing and hunting and building our own houses and making baskets and just whatever we needed, it was done there on the island among us. So we are very resilient people. Now, of course, after doing that all my life, when I got older, I decided, I don't want to do this no more. So I had an opportunity. My cousin was one of the first to leave the island, and she went to New York to become a nurse. And when I tell you, when she came back to the island, you all probably don't even have an understanding of what nurses used to look like back in the day. So now you go to the hospital and everybody just has a badge and everybody's in a blue uniform and you don't really know. But when my cousin, and her name was Cecily, by the way, a name that you don't often hear, but when she stepped into the room, and back then they had the white caps, but it wasn't only the caps, they had the capes. I don't know if you ever saw the capes. And the capes were multicolored, so they were navy blue on the outside, purple on the inside, and then in between all of that was all white. White uniform, white stockings, white shoes, and she was a sight to behold. And I looked at her and I said, you know what, that's what I want to do when I leave. So when I got a little older, I went away to school, and I became a nurse. I went to North Carolina A&T State University, and received my bachelor's in nursing, and later on my master's in healthcare administration, and later on a doctorate in spiritual Christian counseling. Thank you. It wasn't an easy road to hoe, as they would say, because there weren't many of us. My cousin Cecily was the first African-American nurse to work at the U.S. Naval Hospital, Beaufort. So she paved the way. Yeah. She paved the way for us. And then I came in as the second civilian African-American nurse to work at the big hospital. So nursing has been a wonderful career. And it takes a certain personality to be a nurse. So I pray for all of you that you would have good nurses, because nursing is all about caring, and you have to love people in order to be a good nurse. But so the other question was, how did I become an artist? So after years into my nursing career, and living on St. Helena, I'd come back, I'd married this wonderful man here. You all see him? Stand. Yeah, he married me and took me away after college and took me to Japan and to some other places that I never thought I would go. But he eventually came back home, and his mother and father moved back to the area where we lived on St. Helena. And my parents were across the street, so we were still one big family. And we had 2 children, my son Michael and my daughter Felicia. And I had never known loss. You know, you hear that people passed away, but I just had never experienced that firsthand. And in '05, all of a sudden, my world turned upside down. That's the moment I think, as Cora says, you go, Yeah, my world turned upside down. One after the other, every 6 months, for 2 years, I lost one of those people. Every 6 months for 2 years. And because I was the nurse, it was pretty much expected, you know, that was my duty, to be at the bedside, to handle the medication, to make sure that everybody was comfortable and everything was in its place. And doing all of this, I was still working, still taking care of my children and my husband, but I kept going. And I kept going. First it was his father, then his mother, then my father, and on Christmas Eve of '07, we laid my mother to rest. And with the loss of my mother, my whole world just kind of changed. After doing all of this constant caring, I was just kind of left lost. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to keep going, you know, taking care of my family. So I would do the best I could, work a day, come home, take care of the kids, prepare a meal. And I had a back porch this in that kind of overlooks the water, and I would just sit there. I did this for day in and day out for I don't know how long. But then one afternoon, my husband came in, striking in his military uniform, I must say. And he came in and he had this big bundle of stuff in his hand. And I kind of looked at him and he said, "Here, I brought you something." He said, "Take this and come back to me." And so I took the bundle and I began to tear the paper bag away. And inside that bundle was easel and canvas, apron, paintbrushes, and every color of paint that you can imagine, watercolor, oil paint, acrylics. And it was just amazing. And I looked at it and he said, "Try it." And so immediately I began to set up my easel and canvas right there on the porch. And the first color I chose was a cerulean blue, and the canvas was white. And I remember not knowing too well what I was doing. I slathered the brush with paint, and I just took a wide swath. And the moment that that blue hit that white of the canvas, something leaped inside of me, and my artist came alive. And from that moment, I began painting. And I painted my way out of the pain and out of the darkness. And I came back to him. Yeah.
That is Really, really inspiring story, and hats off to you for being a caretaker. I know firsthand how that can be, and it's such an emotional and spiritual experience, and I'm really glad that your husband saw the light in you and was able to bring that back through your work. That's incredible. So, how would you say that your Gullah culture influenced your artistic styles and themes for your work?
Well, as I said before, we grew up in isolation. There was no bridge, you know. There were no street roads, street signs. A lot of people don't even know that. When we moved about the island, it was related to the family that lived there and the community that they lived in. And because Gullah means kinfolk, everybody knew everybody. And so there were never any street signs. And so eventually we did get street signs. But I created a Binya shirt because I realized through my children that I would say something like, go down there to the corner. You know where the truck is down there on the corner. And they wouldn't know where the corner was. You know, I said, go down there. The Jenkins live in Land's End. We know down in Land's End. And they couldn't find the place. And I'm like, you know what? We're rapidly losing a part of our culture because they don't know. And so I created the shirt. It's called Binya. There are some over in the gallery. And you can't see the back of it. But on the back of the shirt are about 13 communities, I'm guessing 13 communities, all listed out on the back. And the shirt explains that you have been here if you've been on St. Helena. And it lists all these little hamlets and all these little places that pretty soon will be forgotten if we don't try to embrace this in our art, in Gullah art. And so that's what I try to do. The other thing that I try to do is to capture things from my childhood, you know, things that we did that in isolation that I don't know if other people did it, but you know, they would let us out early in the morning after they gave us some grits, and that grits went with whatever we had the night before. So if you had greens, then you had greens and grits. If you had chicken, then you had chicken and grits. It just made a meal, you know, and nothing was wasted. And so once they let us out for the day, we spent the most idyllic time on that island, just exploring the marshes and the tidal creeks. And we were never hungry, so we never came back in for lunch, and you know, we didn't come back until it was dinner time and bedtime, because there was things like sour salad. You ever heard of sour salad? But it's a grass that grows, and you just pick it and you chew it up, and I don't know why, but it was very good. And we enjoyed that, just like honeysuckle, where you would go and you take the nectar out of the honeysuckle. But there was pomegranates and peaches, and tomatoes and watermelon, and crabs and shrimp, and so we just lived off the land all day long. And so, you know, some of these things are what I try to capture. Another big part of our life and what I try to capture in the art are the praise houses. A lot of our life depended upon spirit because we are a spiritual people, and we know that we would never have survived if it were not for spirit. And so most of my art will capture a little piece of that spirit. You'll see a little praise house in the back, or you may even see 3 birds in the sky, and those depict spirit. And so these are the things that I try to capture, but there's so much more that we don't want to lose, because nobody talks about our Indian ancestry. It's never really discussed. We understand that we are descendants of slaves from West Africa, but we also have to begin to admit that some of us really Binya. We Binya. We didn't come from anywhere. We've been right here. And You know, the Spaniards and the French that came, they will tell you they met the Gual or Guali Indian when they came. They will tell you that they went extinct, but then we turned into Gullah, and so we're here. And so a part of our, the things that I like to capture again is the Indian influence, the basket weaving, and all of those things that we could make tents on that island that would put anybody to shame. We would take a palmetto tree, honey, and in about 20 minutes you have your living, standing home. Because we just knew how to do it. I mean, it was a part of our culture that was passed down. And certainly that's a part now that, you know, may be lost. And so my art is what I try to do in capturing some of these things and in the hopes that they won't be lost for future generations.
Wow. What materials and techniques do you prefer to use in art? I know he gave you an array of materials.
Yes, and I continue to use that array of material until I discovered that paint works on board just as well as it does on canvas. And I like painting on glass, and I especially like painting on tin. I don't travel with too much of that, but I enjoy using all of those mediums when I do paint.
Can you share a specific piece of art that holds significant meaning for you and explain its story?
Okay. Well, I just happened to bring this fan, and this is over there. But this piece holds significance for me for several reasons. The first reason is that when I retired, this was the first piece I made after retirement. And it's entitled, Sing Hallelujah. I was grateful to have made those 30 years. And so that was wonderful. The other reason this is important to me is that this piece was selected by Brook Green Gardens in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as a part of their permanent installation to their Gullah Geechee garden. So I was very honored to do that. And then the final reason that I like this, which I think is still very special, is that when I was inducted into the National Association of Women Artists, this piece was used to introduce me. And so I'm very proud of that.
But I would really like to know about the work you're doing now.
Oh, wow. I failed retirement. Did I tell you that? I failed retirement miserably. I went back to church, rededicated my life back to church, my husband and I. And the minister got up one day and he said, you know, I really think we should have a food bank here. And I looked at my husband and I said, well, let's do it. Not having the first clue about how to run a food bank. But we did it. In 2017, we began a food bank that initially we took care of maybe 10, 15, 20 people that grew to over 1,000 people being fed per month last month. From that food bank, I'm proud to say, several other initiatives were started. We came out of COVID as a different people. I guess we all agree that something really went wrong in COVID. But what we noticed most of all, that our children were affected. Our children had lost several grade levels in reading and math. And so as a way to try to strengthen that, through the food bank, I started an after-school program. The after-school program, and I hired teachers, retired teachers, begged them to come out and fill retirement with me. And we hired them to come in and help them in their reading and math. And along with that, they got a nice hot meal every day. From that initiative, we did 2 sites, my church and another place called the Gullah Way, which is on St. Helena also. The school district took notice after 1 year, and they decided that this is a program that we need to continue. And so from that one program, we now have 18 sites all across the world. COVID sparked another initiative because when COVID hit, and most of the people we serve are seniors and children, we recognized that our seniors weren't showing up. And so we knew that they needed the food, but couldn't figure out how to get it to them. And so with another initiative, we took on the task of preparing bags and taking it to the doors and delivering it to the porches for the people. Beaufort Memorial Hospital realized what we were doing and joined hands with us in partnership. And they began to give us hot meals to also take out to these people. So we were delivering meals every day to the porches of St. Helena to keep our seniors and our children going. So I think there's
Smith, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story. I know everyone is just as inspired as me with hearing everything that you have going on, everything that you've done, and the heart that you have to give back to your people and your community. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
You're quite